Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of The Author's Kiss, right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my wonderful repeat guest is Bella Mahaya. Mahaya Carter. She was back with us in 2018. Gosh, where did the time go? And, we were talking about anxiety, her journey from anxiety to joy, and a beautiful book she wrote, Raw. And so I really do encourage you to go back and listen to that show, because it really is, it's heartfelt, and it really speaks to a lot of how we feel, and really would benefit you greatly. But today is about a new book. Where do you hang your hammock? Finding peace of mind while you write, publish, and promote your book. And let's face it, there's an awful lot of people that have written a book in this last year. I wonder where they got the time. And so for a lot of people, it's that time to express, but it isn't just about kind of writing it and just throwing it out there. There is a technique to it as well. So she says the invaluable resources for writers, Where Do You Hang Your Hammock, debunks the myth that anxiety is the price of admission to a creative life. Inspiring and practical, this guidebook, divided into five parts: dream, nourish, write, publish, and promote, shows writers how to use their present moment circumstances and stepping stones into a successful and meaningful writing life, navigated from the inside out. That's where we want you to write from, folks, the inside out. Bella is a creative writer, teacher, empowerment coach, and speaker who believes in the power of writing to heal and transform lives. She views publishing and book promotion as an opportunity to deepen self-awareness, nourish meaningful connections, and delight in peak experiences while being of service. She's the author of 3 books: Where Do You Hang Your Hammock, Finding Peace of Mind While You Write, Publish and Promote Your Book, and the award-winning memoir, Raw, A Journey from Anxiety to Joy, and Secrets of My Sex, okay, a poetry collection. Bella has helped hundreds of writers experience greater freedom and joy, peace of mind. And she holds a degree in literature, film, spirituality, psychology. Her writing has appeared in dozens of print and online journals. In other words, she knows what she's doing. Welcome back, my dear.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I love being with you.
Right back at you. And, in the book that we did, before Raw, it is about being raw. It's about being honest with self. And it's about, a lot of people have taken this opportunity. I thought when the pandemic came about, I'm going to finally write that book, but suddenly I'm doing 8 shows a week and there is no time. So I still haven't got there. But for a lot of people, it was that time. It was that invitation to kind of get raw, or to kind of, this is the time to really put it down there. And so it is a great time for it, but that doesn't mean that the production should go out there without some finesse, right?
Absolutely. And actually, I love what you said. I wanted to write. I thought maybe I'd write a book, but I ended up doing all these shows. And I mean, the truth is, that's a beautiful creative process. And that's where you're being called and you're answering the call. So to me, what the important thing is answering the call. It doesn't really matter what that looks like. It just matters that you're saying yes to whatever your heart's desire is.
Oh, yes, whatever the soul speaks to, right? It's like the soul speaks to the open heart and lifts the spirit into action, and the mind will know what it needs to know when it needs to know it, and don't argue with it.
Exactly. And that's why I love what you said, because you're responding to that call. That call is maybe more sincere, or more, just a little bit louder, than the other call.
Right. Whatever that call is to creativity, it's not got to be done from the outside in. It's not for, other people or famous or glory. Nobody does podcasting for fame and glory. Nobody writes even a book for that. Everybody thinks they're going to be the J.K. Rowling. No, on Michelle Obama. It doesn't happen like that. But you've got to do it because you really want to be vulnerable and honest. Even if you're writing a novel, you're not writing a memoir, you're not writing a reflection story, is that honesty and that intent of why you're doing it really needs to be there, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. In fact, there's there's the 5 sections of the book that you mentioned: dream, nourish, write, publish, and promote. And I thought that was important at the beginning of the publishing section to talk about, why do we write? And, if you want to write to get rich and famous, find something else. Yes. Find another way. Because this isn't that way. I mean, it does, there are people for whom that happens, but they are in the way minority.
Yes.
So most of the reasons why, or some of the reasons that I hear, from my students and clients, and also in my own life, some of the reasons why we write is we love stories, or we're trying to make meaning out of our lives, or we just have this urge to express ourselves, or we're curious about something and we want to understand it, and the list goes on and on. I actually have a long list in the beginning of the publishing section about why we write. And so you might say, well, why do we need to talk about that in the publishing section? And the answer is because if you're clear about why you're doing what you're doing, then you'll be able to navigate the best route to publication, because today there are so many viable routes to publication. And it's important to know why you're doing what you're doing before you actually set out on that path.
It's not an easy path.
No, it's not.
I know my brother's an author, and for him, he's got a routine, and the way he writes a story before he's going to even sit down at the computer. There's a diligence to it as well. There's a discipline to it. For some people, it's going to be dabble. I'm just going to kind of dabble away with this book. I'm doing it for me. And other people are wanting to put this book out to have a meaningful purpose, whether it's a novel or whether it's a memoir. But there does have to be a certain structure and a discipline behind it, doesn't there?
Absolutely. And I love that word discipline, because the root of the word discipline is disciple, which means student or one who learns. And so I think if we approach not only our creative work, whatever that might look like, but also our lives with a sense of being a student, with a learning orientation, then life and work becomes a lot more interesting. It means that we can make mistakes. It means that we can fumble the ball. We can show up and not be perfect. We can just learn from our mistakes, and we can grow. And I think in my experience, that's the most helpful way to think about life, as a disciple, as one who learns.
1,000,000% with you on that. If you stop losing your wonderment, your exploration, that sense of adventure, then you become very stagnant and life stops meaning anything to you. We are here to have that experience, to learn. And, some lessons are going to be a little hard, and other lessons are just going to be absolutely exquisite. But they're all part of making you who you are and stepping into your meaningful purpose. So don't stop wondering, right?
Yeah, and not only do they, I think you really nailed it when you said it makes us who we are. And I would also say that when life is just humming along beautifully, we're kind of in our comfort zones, and that's not, in my life, those aren't the times when I necessarily learned the most.
Or the most creative.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. For me, I will say this, that it's been easier for me to be creative when my life has been more stable.
Yes.
I will say that. Because creativity requires a certain presence of mind and heart, and you have to be able to show up. When you're, for me, when I was in that place that I talked about in Raw, where I had an anxiety disorder and I couldn't function, and I was afraid to leave my house, I couldn't write. Let me just back up and say I couldn't work on the memoir at that time. Right. I was writing in my journal to just stay sane, to help me just sort of stay sane. And much of what I wrote in my journal, I actually was able to just import later into my memoir. But So I would just say that I don't believe that anxiety is the price of admission to a creative life, which
Right.
Rollo May said way back in 1969. I don't believe that that is the truth. I believe that's a myth that is destructive and dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that to create, like all the geniuses over time, like Van Gogh and other geniuses who created, they created despite their mental illness, not because of it.
Right. I
So
think actually where a great deal of the creativity came from, because they saw things in a non-linear way. And, I think the mental illness was the frustration with everybody else's straight line when they, see many lines, right?
right, but I don't think that the mental illness was like a happy contributor
Right.
to the creativity. I think that the creativity was there and the genius was there, and that the creation got done despite the mental illness.
Right.
And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that for me, like having stability in my life has enabled me. Those have been the times when I've been the most creative. But when when my life has been upended by struggle and challenge, which has happened, there's been, maybe 3 or 4 times in my life where it was just my life was exploded, and it was hard to function. And it was, grief and sadness and illness and, all of these things. Actually during those times in my life, yes, I would write in my journal, and thank God for that, because that's the place where I could just process what was going on. But in terms of being productive on like a particular project, no. And oftentimes I couldn't work during those times because my life was just required such a deep attention and care.
You were going through the process. But I think, from my perspective, I see that people who have gone through that process of pain, anguish, finding their strength, finding their courage, finding their abilities, that's when the creativity steps in, that you are now calm enough to
Yes.
write it. But it is because of the struggle that you've
Yes.
gone through
Yes.
that gives you the creative content in your more peaceful times to now put it down.
Yes, that's absolutely beautifully expressed. It's after you've gone through it,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to go through it. And when
Yes.
you're going through it, it's not necessarily, you can't really maybe talk, write about it while you're going through it. But after you go through it, those are the times when I've learned the most. Going through that anxiety disorder, I learned all about anxiety and what it is and how to manage. I learned that I was creating my own anxiety with my thinking, and I've learned how to not control my thinking, but I've learned how to respond differently to anxious thinking. So it's just been, a phenomenal journey.
Well, the thing is that all the journeys that you take to managing the anxiety, it isn't about beating it, because that kind of suggests that, you're being unkind to your anxiety. But when you learn to manage it and kind of friend it, and nurture it, then when it comes up, what to do with it rather than it doing to you. But I think, we're inclined as human beings to take an aggressive approach to everything. And I think if we can take more of a loving approach, the healing would be so much deeper and more lasting.
I love that. And, I've had these insights come to me over the years. And one of the insights has been, stop fighting.
Yes. Put the boxing gloves down. Because actually what you're doing is beating yourself up.
Yeah.
Right? And it's if we're talking to a friend, we're there lovingly and nurturingly, helping them through the process. But when it comes to us, we feel we need to toughen up and, no, wrap your arms around yourself. Do what you need to do for that self-love, that self-caring, because that's where you need to be. But this, no, we don't need any of the Popeyes.
I couldn't agree more.
But I do find, though, and you must see it too in the work that you do, that those that have gone through a process become extraordinary writers, because that process has allowed them to express in a way deeper or more dimensionally than just the straightforward linear life.
Well, I actually see those as two separate things. I think a person can go through deep things and never, and never sit down and write about it.
Right.
And they can certainly learn and grow and have a full experience, but maybe they don't feel compelled to write about it, or maybe they feel compelled to write about it, but they have a lot of thinking about why that's not a good idea, which is the kind of thinking that plagued me for many, many years. And I write a lot about in this new book, thinking like, well, with all the stuff that's going on in the world, who cares what I have to say?
Yes, exactly.
And
Who am I?
and yeah, who am I? Or who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Or thinking like, well, I'm not good enough, or all of those thoughts. And what I would say about that is, I think that we experience life more like, it's like we think we're looking out a window and looking at life, but I think in many ways we're really looking at a mirror when we look out the window. And we're seeing ourselves reflected back to us.
Yes.
And I think what's important is that if you feel like you have something that you want to write, just write it.
No expectation, just get
it.
No
expectation, no judgment. No. It doesn't define you. It doesn't, it's not a comment on your worth or your value. Just write it.
Don't compare.
And don't.
I mean, I get asked all the time, what's your favorite show? And I said, there's far too many, and there's different stories that have hit me in different ways. And there's certain stories that stay with you. And, because, it always is that reflection back on you. Could have I survived that? Could I have found my way back from that? And that strength and that courage is always an inspiration to you. And I think that's the thing. Don't compare, because every story has a reason, and every story is speaking to someone who's at that stage in life.
And not only that, but you don't know what telling your story will do for you.
Right. Yeah.
It might free you from shame, from doubts, from fears. It might liberate you. It probably will. This has been my experience. It will liberate you from self-sabotaging thought, thinking, and behaviors. And it's a way of setting yourself free. And when one person sets themselves free,
yes,
it's like then they become a different kind of a person. And then how they interact with their family changes. Excuse me. And how they interact with, like for me, it's like my family, my students, my clients, and it has ripple effects.
Yes.
So our obligation is to do the best we can by ourselves first. And then in that way, we can slowly start to change the world, I think.
Well, I 100% agree. I mean, I had a veteran on who wrote a book about a particular battle, and it was a brutal battle. And, people were dropping left, right, and center, and they were pinned down. And he said, I wasn't glorifying the battle. I was talking about the pain and the anguish of not being able to be there, or the struggle afterwards. And he said, this was a therapy for me. But the people that came back to him, nothing to do with the battle, but who had lost their kids in battle, said, thank you. Thank you, because it gave me more insight. Yeah. Into what my child was going through, and the thank you for my kid that's come home with post-traumatic stress. I understand why now. And this is the thing, we don't know. He came back to me and said, the impact the book has had is way beyond my expectation. And that's the thing, is don't write to expect.
Right.
But
you're so right. That's actually kind of the next level in the progression. So if you're doing this work for yourself because you need to do it,
and
you experience transformation, the chances are pretty good that when someone else reads this, they're going to see themselves reflected in your story in some way or another. That's why we read, even fiction. We read to see ourselves reflected in the character's journey, and we're trying to figure out, maybe it's not conscious, maybe it's unconscious, but we're trying to figure out how to navigate our own lives because it's hard.
And very often when we read, whodunits or the hero in it, and we become that hero because we're looking for the hero inside of us in our own lives, or even recognizing that we're a hero in our own lives. This person is fighting espionage or this or that. Well, what are you fighting in your life that is your battle? And that kind of stealing some of that courage from from, you know, the character in a book can be something that you go, well, you know, I'm going to apply that to me into what I do. So again, it's not to dictate what influence people are going to have. It's just to, you know, once, as you know, with anything, you put the book out there, I put a podcast out there, it's out there in the ether, it's being promoted, but who picks it up? Who reads it? Who listens to it? Are all those that are ready for it at that time. But we
Yeah,
don't have any control over that or how they're going to respond to it.
that's right. That's right. And that's all we can do. Our job is to show up. Outcomes are
Yes.
not our job.
Right. But don't you think that there are a lot of authors that are looking for the outcome?
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, I think that's where they get into trouble.
Mm.
I mean, do your best.
Yes.
Put it out there and then let go.
Yeah.
And then let go. I have a collection of 84 love letters but that were written between my grandparents when they were courting in the late 1920s, mid 1920s. And one of the things that my grandfather told my grandmother, and I don't remember, I think that my grandmother was a concert pianist. She went to Juilliard. And I think that she was just talking about the competition and how hard it was. And what he said to her was, all comparisons are hateful.
Mm.
And so
Yes.
if you think about, you know, I mean, that's a kind of strong language. But if you think about it, you know, if I'm comparing myself to somebody else, that's not a loving gesture.
There's two C's that I don't like: comparison and competitiveness.
Right.
Competitiveness belongs in the sports. It doesn't belong in competing with someone else. And that comparison, you know, is we're chalk and cheese, but you wanting to compare. There is no, you can't compare to someone else's pain or sorrow. My pain's more than yours. How do you know?
Yeah.
Right? You know, it's not for us to compare. You know, embrace your own beautiful divine self and who you are, why you're here. And that's the only responsibility that you have. And if you're going to be comparing, you're missing out on really the beauty that lies within you.
Yes, I totally agree.
Writing, I think, I mean, you know, as I said, I've had people nagging me for my book, and I've decided that I'm going to actually I do podcasts that way. It's either write a blog or I press record and let it comes out and then write afterwards. And
Great.
And that's just the way it comes out of me. And I'm going to actually take out of my 335 or 36 shows, I'm going to take out some of the poignant ones because they're the Sarah's view of life, you know, and how I respond to something. And somebody's going to transcribe them for me, and we're going to just put that in a book, because it's like, do I want to kind of write, you know, my beginning, my book, my life? And it's like, well, a lot of my perspective is already speaking to that. And
well, you're going to be very interested in what I have to say.
Ooh.
Because this book actually, so let me tell you how this book came to be, because this will be valuable for you. Several years ago, my publisher said to me, you know, you might want to consider turning your blog into a book.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I really didn't know why that was a good idea. Like, why should I do that? And then after I finished my memoir, I thought, you know, I wonder if I could do that, because the memoir took 5 years to write and it was gut wrenching.
Yes.
And maybe this would be like a kind of a non-serious, easy book project.
Right.
Maybe I could do this quickly. So let me check it out. So the first thing that I did was I cataloged all of my blog posts. Step one, inventory, take an inventory. So I took an inventory. I had close to 200 blog posts.
Mm-hmm.
And I noted, so then the next step was to look for themes.
Yes.
So what I noticed was that most of the posts fit into one of the 5 categories that are the parts of my book, which is to dream, nourish, write, publish, or promote. So what I did was, anything that didn't fit into one of those categories, I just ignored. And then I shuffled the different posts into the different parts that made sense to me. Then I strung them together. Then I realized, oh, stringing together blog posts doesn't make a book.
Mm.
So what's missing? What do I need? So what I needed was a unifying principle.
Right.
An umbrella theme
Yes.
And I had this story about the hammock, which maybe I'll tell you about in a little while. But for now, let's stick to the turning the blog into a book. So it'd be the same for you. You would have your material transcribed. You would catalog it. You'd have a complete inventory on paper of what everything is. And then you would look at the, the different themes and just determine what are the different parts of the book. And then you would put different pieces into the parts, and then you would string them together. The next stage is, okay, so what's the unifying theme? In my case, it had to do with a story about a hammock and perspective, which I'll tell you later. But then you'll find that there'll be a lot of redundancy.
Yes.
Because you've written about the same things in multiple ways, multiple times. So then you have to go about eliminating the redundancy. And then you'll find that there are gaping holes. And you'll just need to fix up those holes. You'll need to write connective material.
Yes.
And, what was the other piece that I was going to say? So you fix the redundancies, you fix the holes, and you just kind of listen and then you ask yourself the question, what else? Oh, I know what I was going to say. So what has happened over the years is that you've developed more wisdom.
Right.
You've been thinking about all this stuff for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you actually can bring something more. So that's where the what else question comes in. You start to say well, what else didn't I say? What else is there? And then you discover that organizing all this material thematically as opposed to chronologically, it starts to take on a larger meaning. That you're not your little mind isn't even planning it, but something happens. So I actually wrote this book in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And by the way, if you want help with this, I can help you with this process. I'm just telling you. Yeah. But so this book came together. It was 2 or 3 weeks, and it was I couldn't do anything else. I was obsessed. Once I started chronicling it and doing the process, it was 8 hours a day. I was just in my office. I was barely eating and sleeping. I was just doing this work. And suddenly I realized, wow, I have a book or I have a manuscript. And then, I went through the whole editorial process. I went through, actually there wasn't much developmental editing, which is usually the first step. You go to a developmental editor and they look at it but there wasn't much. I mean, my editor looked at it. She said, wow, this is well done, which was amazing to me because I didn't know where it came from.
Right.
I felt like it wasn't me. In fact, I still pick up this book. I have a book right in front of me, and it's a pretty thick book.
Yes.
I pick up this book sometimes. I keep it on my table next to my reading chair in the living room. I pick it up and at random I open a page and I start reading. And the feeling that I have when I read, first of all, I get inspired. That's the first thing. And then I'm it doesn't seem like I wrote it.
Oh, you read something and go, who wrote this? And see at the bottom it was you. And you go, wow, that's knowingness, right? That's allowing.
That's allowing. So I would say your book is probably, it's at least 50%. I mean, it's at least 50% written. If you just transcribe your, you could pick and choose because you've been doing this for a long time, right? You may have too much material. But if
yes.
the first thing is to just kind of listen to it all with an open mind and just take some notes and start to look for the important thing is the thematic content. Start to think about the themes, start to and then once you have themes, then you can sort of create titles.
Yes.
And then you have chapters, each of my blog posts, they became, what's great about this book is you can pick it up and you can read any chapter. They're completely contained. Because there were many of them, not all of them, because I had to write a lot of material to connect, I had to connect all this stuff. So there's a lot of new material as well. But you can pick it up and you can just read a chapter. Let's say you're not even a writer and you're interested in starting some creative pursuit. You can pick this up and go to the dream section. Or if you're just a person who's having a hard time in your life, you can go to the nourish section. Or if you're a writer who's having a book coming out this month and you want to know about promotion, you can turn to the promotion section. So it's really, it's deep and there's a lot here. And at the end of each at the end of each chapter, I have, oh, this is kind of cool. I love the design work. Each of these sections has a different kind of a hammock.
Nice.
But there's also at the end of each chapter, there's a journal writing prompt. And the journal writing prompt, kind of invites you to explore how what was discussed in the chapter, how to put that into action in your own writing and in your own life.
I always find, because people send me their books, which I love. But one of the things I love to do is, what do I need to know today? Pick out a book randomly, open up a page, and there is always something there at that time that I needed to know, that I didn't know I needed to know.
That's
it's
right.
so poignant, right? And I think, those kind of books, I mean, if you're reading a thriller or novel or memoir or things, the going from chapter to chapter, is building up the story. But for the kind of book that you've written there, it could be, I don't know what I need to know. What do I need to know? And just open it up. And
do you have a copy of my book? Because I want you to have a copy of my book. If you don't have one, I'm going to send one.
And I don't have a copy.
Okay, I'm going to send you one. There's also, send me your address so I can send you one.
I will do so. Thank you.
And there's also a chapter in my book called Turning Your Blog into a Book. And it's totally translatable for podcasts.
Right. And it's I'm a short, I'm an article writer. My brother's the novelist. I'm the article writer. For me, it just pours out. Whether I'm writing it or whether I'm verbalizing and then writing it, it's just, just press play or just literally fingers on the keyboard, one word, and there it goes. That's who I am. And it's like, well, you've got to write this book and you've got to write the chapters like this. And it's like, it's not me, and where this it would be me, because
fabulous.
You're getting my whole perspective, but you're getting it, from that really organic thing. I mean, some people are very, very good at kind of laying down the complete structure and this and that, and some people are just, like the organic, let it be writers, and
there's no right way.
No,
there's no right
everything
way.
has an audience, right? Yeah,
exactly. And I would say, I personally would love to read your book, because I have had conversations with you. This is my second conversation with you, and I know your wisdom. And I personally, selfishly want to read your book, because I actually like books that have bite-sized, short chapters, like articles, like that just, I can open it up and I can just get a hit of your wisdom. I love that. I think I encourage you to follow through on that, because I think there are so many people who will benefit, and all of your listeners benefit from your wisdom all the time, right? So
and the people I interview. So that's the reason why I do what I do, and that's the reason why a writer really writes. It's putting the baby out there and hoping it has an impact on someone. And again, we never know what that impact's going to be. And for me, it's you get, how many people are following you, how many people are listening, and I say, all those that are ready to hear. All right, and it could be one thing in the entire conversation that's a shift of perspective or a little light bulb moment. And we don't know what you're going to get out of the content. It's just up to us to lay it out there for you, and it will be what it needs to be for you.
Absolutely. I want to share with you a quote that an author friend of mine shared with me after my book launch. She actually shared part of it during my book launch, and it's that famous Emerson quote that says, "To laugh often and love much, to win the respect of persons and the affection of children, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded."
Yes. Yes. That old song, "Will you still love me? Will you still want me when I'm 64?" If we, I remember, I don't even know what age I was, but what do you want people to know of you when you're dying? And I said, I just want to know I've made an impact. Just that I've served, right?
Right.
And that I've made a difference somewhere in someone's life.
Right.
I don't want to be the waste of space. So,
right.
And, again, it's not for us to define what that difference is. It's just for us to put our best foot forward.
Yep.
And just simply be. And if you're looking for the accolades, you're doing it for the wrong reason, right? But when you do get that feedback from someone, that say, oh, this chapter or that talk or this, that made a difference. It's a hallelujah moment.
It
It
is.
really is, right?
It's
So,
sweet. It's so
yes,
sweet.
yeah, it just means you're on the right track. You're doing the right thing.
Right. It's, yeah, exactly. It means you're right. It's like, good for you. It's a little pat on the back. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Stay the
yeah,
course. You're in the right
yeah,
direction, right?
yeah.
I think, I mean, brilliant idea of putting all your blogs together, absolutely. And actually, that is something I did start compulating together some years ago. And then literally, I am just so busy with this. I'm going to have to physically cut back time here in order to do it. Plus,
Well,
I have,
that's the thing.
yeah,
You
I have
need
a
to
new
actually
grandson
create a,
too, which I'm trying to balance.
here's what I've discovered, because have worked with hundreds of authors over the past 10 years. And what I've discovered is that it's really not about time.
Mm,
Because the truth is, we make the time for the things that are really important.
yeah,
We do. We choose. It's very easy to say, I don't have the time. But I have heard stories of, like, a woman who has 10 children who, wrote in bed, like using her husband's back as as a desk, right?
yes,
To lean her notebook against his back. So, like, where there's a will, there's a way.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I
And
think
so,
it's also where the time is too. There was one author that really stuck out to me. She was in marketing, but when she was young, she wrote stories. She loved writing little stories. And then she, went to university, went to marketing, was doing very, very well. She stuck in a traffic accident, a traffic jam one day, and the story started coming out of her. And she didn't have enough paper. She's writing on her arm. She's writing on any surface she can. And now she is, a world-renowned children's author, because that's what she was always meant to be. So you do get that tap on the shoulder of, like, no more excuses. It's time, right? And pay attention to that.
yes, and I want to come back to this because so many people, this is such an important thing. So many people say, I don't have time, and yet they have the desire.
Yeah.
So what I say to those, so I want to address that because there is a way to address that.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a couple of things. So if you say, I want to do this, but I don't have time, which is so common, you can't even imagine. It's probably the most common thing that I hear as a writing coach.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be that it's not important enough to you, in which case, fine, no problem. However, in a lot of the cases of the people that I work with, they come to me, they say, like, I just haven't been able to make the time, but I really want it.
Mm-hmm.
And they really know that they want it, but they think it's because of the time. So I say to them, okay, look, if you know you really want it and you think it's because of the time, let's try an experiment. Okay. So I say to them, could you carve out 15 minutes twice a week to work on this project that you say is really important to you? And they say, well, 15 minutes isn't enough time. I say, well, let's say that it is. What if 15 minutes is enough time? And here's what usually happens. At the end of the week, when it's time to check in with me, I say, how did it go? And they say, well, you're not going to believe this.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 days a week where my commitment was to show up for 15 minutes. And once I got started, I didn't want to stop.
Right.
And so I spent 2 hours on Saturday morning working on this thing, and I got so much done.
Yeah.
And what I know to be true is that the hardest part is just getting started.
Yes.
And we have all these expectations, and there are usually, like in sales talk, the lingo is, objections.
Yeah.
What are the objections? You got to deal with the objection. And time is a kind of universal objection that we slap on things. But there's usually deeper issues underneath time, like and this is true about getting started. It's that, and it's unconscious. We don't realize it's there, but it's like, nobody's going to want to read this.
Right.
I'm wasting my time. I could be doing other things that will be more, that would be guaranteed to have an impact. I'm not smart enough. I'm not articulate enough. There's all this other stuff.
I'm dyslexic.
What?
I'm dyslexic.
Exactly. So am I, right? So we have all this conditioning from our childhood, like all these reasons why we can't do it. And that's the reason we don't do it.
Right.
It's not because of time, because anybody who really wants to do it, if they look at the truth, if they look at the real things that are holding them back, you can do it. Anyone can do it. And and I actually love working with people on that level, because I love helping people, just be all that they can be. I love helping people, break out and just like have this, like, your dreams can come true. Absolutely.
Right. And I think, as you said, in the summer, I kind of lighten up a little
Yes.
on the
Yes.
book. And, already in August, I want to take some time out.
Yeah.
And, maybe.
Me too.
Right. So, obviously be with my little baby grandson, but it's also perhaps a good time to actually at least start the process of compiling what would be complementary to each other. All the different shows I've done, all the different blogs I've written, of what would kind of be the theme. Get the theme at least going, because when you get that, then that's half the battle, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would say I could give you very specific advice. Come up with a title and a subtitle.
Right.
Right. And know that could change, and probably will change. But it will give you an idea. Like when you're thinking of a title, come up with an image, like a thing, right? Something that, like, when we hear it, we have a picture in our minds. And then the subtitle, like, where do you hang your hammock? We have a visual right away, right?
Right.
But you don't have any idea what the book is about.
Yes.
So the subtitle explains what the book is about. It's about finding peace of mind while you write, publish, and promote your book. So now you have like an image, and you have an understanding of what the book is about. So if you just try to brainstorm, this is a great thing to do in the summer. Like, you can be at the beach with your grandkid or whatever. If you just try to, like, just keep a little notebook and just write down ideas, like images for what your book is, what is it called? This is like the perfect way to talk about my book, because this is what my book is all about. It's about coaching people to do exactly what you say you might be interested in doing. So this is great, because I'm sure there are going to be people listening to this podcast who want to write a book, who are in exactly the same position that you're in. Smart people, talented people with something to say, but maybe, they're not quite sure how to start. And so, start with a title, come up with a title. It could be anything. I have a friend and colleague, her name is Robin Finn, and she's a wonderful writing teacher and coach. And she said to me, she had been a student of mine for many years. And I said, I don't know what to call my book. She said, go to your website and look. Yeah. And like, see what words you use. And I noticed it in my bio. I talked, like, at the very end, I talked about, like, my hammock was the best Mother's Day gift I had ever received. And I talked about the hammock. And my editor said to me, so I was going to call it the hammock, right? My editor just said, well, like, that's not really engaging. Like, maybe it could be a question, to make. So it's a process, right? But if you start to think about, like, what's an image that might come into your mind that lands well with you, that just in your body, not in your mind, but in your body, sort of viscerally feels like something you'd like people to feel when they think of picking up your book.
And that part I've already actually done. I mean, my shows are called Sarah's View of Life, and I think I would just continue with that. It's Sarah's View of Life, and my daughter's an artist.
Yeah, but I would say this. I would say that it could be more specific. Mm-hmm. It could actually, like, Sarah's View of Life, like that doesn't give me an image. That doesn't tell me anything.
Right. So the byline.
So like, I would push you, and I would say, come up with an image for the title. And then, like, what is Sarah's view of life? Like, give me something that is specific and tangible that I can hold on to and say, wow, I need that, because I don't know,
Right. Igniting the heart and souls that drive us, So, I mean, it'll have to be around that, because that's everything I am and do, right? So, yeah.
That's juicier.
Yeah, and like, I have an image for the thing is, it's literally an eye that has layers and layers and layers and layers of view, right?
It does, and people will get to that. Yeah. People will get to that, because that's what your chapters will be. Mm-hmm. Your chapters will be all the layers of your thinking and of your viewing.
Yeah.
And but you need to hook people with your title and subtitle and try to be as specific as possible.
Yeah.
And that's an effective and that's true in writing as well, is that you want to be specific and you want to bring people in with sensory detail. And so when you marry kind of that wisdom, that, you know, the wisdom that you have of many years and your perspective, when you marry that with starting to get specific,
Yes.
it's a magical thing.
Honing it in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You've ignited me here now. I am going to make the time. I am going to do it. And I have had people nagging. I mean, I've wanted to. I've also got another book coming out, which is contributing book, which is our Forgotten Children series. So it's an awareness of you know, the system that is broken and what we can do about it. But that is a book of my other people contributing to it. So I do want to get into the flow of the books. I call them podcast books because we'll be doing podcasts along with the books. But it is, yeah, as a True Colors coach, we all receive information in a different way. And
True.
so I like to be able to put out that information in those different ways so that we don't leave anyone out.
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. There's one more thing I want to add to this, what I've been talking about, because there are so many people in the world who want to write a book or say that they want to write a book. And the other ingredient that's super important is getting the right kind of support.
Yes.
Honestly, when I was working on my memoir, I had two coaches. I had a writing coach, and the problem was, like, she was a professional editor. And I did not want to bring all of my, what I'm going to call my personal crazy, all of my insecurity and all of my neuroses, and there was plenty of it. I didn't want to bring that to that relationship, because I just I wanted to talk to her about the, you know, about the technical aspect of writing. But I had all this other stuff going on in my life, and I had so much fear and anxiety and trouble, and so I worked with a life coach as well. Yeah. And what I have done in my practice is I've kind of married what I've learned from both the life coach skills and the writing coach, because I used to say, like, oh, I just want somebody who can do it all.
Yes.
And there's not that many people who doesn't do it all.
No.
But I do. I mean, I really bring it. I have a master's degree in spiritual psychology, and I really understand life coaching, and I understand writing coaching, and I can do developmental editing. I can't do copy editing. I do not have that skill. I never learned it, but I can do developmental editing, and I can do, you know, all of the work that has to be done emotionally and psychospiritually to shed whatever is holding people back from what they from.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because, you know, a lot of the writing that we're writing today is coming from the heart, the core of us. And if you don't have an editor or a publisher or a supporter that understands that message, you know, we have to edit that out. You've just edited out the very core of the meaning behind it. And so you have to have people that are in flow with you, that are in sync with you, because otherwise they're not going to know either how to edit or support you, and they're going to try and take you down in a different direction. I love my brother to bits. He has a website, magazine website that's been around about 25 years, called hatwriters.com. And when I started writing for him, he would edit everything. And I said, no, you're losing my voice. Yeah. And so I said, just leave my voice up there, you know, edit the grammar and the spelling, because I can't spell to save my life, but leave it up there. And then I started getting responses. I don't understand. And I said, because people are hearing me, because I'm speaking in my language and I'm connecting with people who are on that same vibration. And we can't go wrong. And I say it with people's websites. And actually, this is an extension when it comes to the promotion. You hire someone to do a website for your book. I go look at people's websites, and then I meet them to interview them, and I go, no reflection. Right. No connection. You know, and you got to bring yourself to every aspect of what you do.
This is so important, what you're saying, that I want to piggyback on it, because it's critical. My publicist asked this question at my virtual launch. She said, you know, we love collaborating with you. Could you talk about being a good collaborator and what that means? And I actually didn't answer her question. I actually deflected her question, because I just threw the ball back and said, like, well, I had all these good people to work with, you know, and I talked about my editor and my publisher, my publicist, and I talked about why, you know, like how great all these people were who I collaborated with. So I actually didn't answer the question. So I'm now writing a blog post because I realize, you know what, I know a lot about this subject, collaboration. And the truth is, people think that writing, which is a very solitary act,
Yep.
they think that you don't really have to collaborate.
Right.
But I want to tell you that I collaborate with editors of all kinds, developmental editors who help me get the big picture right, copy editors who tell me how to spell and where to do the punctuation, because like I don't spell well either, and I'm constantly, I think I was dyslexic. I don't think it was never diagnosed in our generation.
Right. No, I was 21 when I got diagnosed with that.
Yeah, and I've gotten to be a better speller as I've been reading more, right. But I'm not a particularly good speller. And so there's copy editing, there's proofreading. And then I work with designers, graphic designers, putting together my website, putting together social media memes, the design of my book cover. I participated in that. The interior design of my book I was involved with. So there are a lot of people to collaborate with. And my best advice about that is, make this decision with your heart.
Yes.
Not your head.
Yes.
Choose the people that you collaborate with well, with your gut, your soul, choose people whose work you appreciate.
Yeah.
Like your brother may be a great writer, but his audience, he's talking about completely different things.
Right.
So when you choose an editor, a developmental editor, you want that person to help you be more you. And
there has to be the synergy. Otherwise, there can't be the representation.
Right. And you have to trust the people that you hire. Like my editor, in the early days, I would send her stuff and she would have a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to hear. But what I suggest that you do when you have a session with your editor, you work with an editor, my strategy is, first of all, the most important thing that I do as a teacher and as an editor, as a coach is first things first. This person needs to feel seen, appreciated, and celebrated.
Yes.
This person needs to feel celebrated. Your background has changed.
I know. It's where I want to be on the beach writing my book.
Perfect. I love it. So I would say, and I hope we're not going to be distracted because the gardener just showed up and they're making noise and I'm not wearing my AirPods. But anyway, we'll carry on. So people need to feel seen, appreciated, and celebrated. That is the first thing.
Yes.
And then it's the editor's job to understand, what is this person trying to say? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not clear yet. It's often not clear the first time around. And a lot of writers think because they didn't get it right the first time around, oh, I'm not a good writer. No, it's a craft. You have to learn, hang in there, be patient, work with an editor, listen to what's being said and see if you can understand it, and don't take it personally. It's not personal.
Yeah, it's a critique. It's not a criticism.
Absolutely.
Know the difference.
Exactly. So then, and then also get support, get whatever support you need. It's very, very difficult to write a book without support. It just is. And
but that goes with anything that you're doing,
Right.
I'm, a solopreneur here. I wear all the hats. Initially, I had somebody who started me off and put me on the right foot. And then it was, it was rather like Braille, just trying to navigate through everything blind, deaf and dumb. But I trusted the heart and the soul. And as you learn, you finesse, right? It's the willing to do not expect everything to come out of the box perfect. We see this on the movies, writing the script and suddenly it's a bestseller. No, it doesn't work that way. Like everything in life, there is a process and you've got to be willing to go through the process. And if you believe in it enough, you will go through it, all the ups and downs and everything else. And then that end product is like giving birth to yourself. It's a new baby. And the wonderment of then where that baby will go and what it will do out in the world is exciting. But as with anything in life, the big C word, commit, collaborate, be compassionate to yourself, and most certainly write with caringness and from the heart.
Yeah, and hold yourself in that way. It's funny, right before I got on with you, I was writing a short description of a talk I'm giving to the publishers and writers of San Diego. And I think that the talk is hands off the wheel.
Mm.
Actually, I just wrote the talk, so I'm trying to think what I called it. I called it hands off the wheel, how to let your inner GPS guide your writing and publishing journey.
Mm.
So I've been talking about like all the things to do. And one of the things, I don't know if I mentioned this the last time we talked, but when I was going through that really hard time, I had a powerful dream. I was driving on the freeway, and we have these big freeways in Los Angeles, and I was entering a curve to go off the freeway, and suddenly the steering wheel came off in my hands.
Mm.
And I was holding the steering wheel, and I just said, oh shit, I'm going to crash.
Right.
And then I realized I'm not crashing. Something else is driving the vehicle that is my life.
Yes.
And I can let go. So there's always in the creative process, there's always this balance between showing up and doing the work and coming up with the title and doing the outline and working with editors and all this, like there's all this structure, but there's also at the same time an understanding that we're not in control.
Right.
And we can let go.
Yes.
Once we show up, if we're just doing the work, showing up and doing the work and, working with editors and so forth, then, then we can trust. We can trust that it's okay. It's all okay.
We're being guided. We're being guided right. Yeah, it's I always call it the knowingness, the channeling. You have to have an open heart, and that wisdom will come through that open heart in truth and in knowledge. It will go into your spirit, into action, and your mind will know what it needs to know when it needs to know it, why it needs to know it in that moment. Don't analyze it. Don't go, why, but I don't understand. Just be in it. Just be in it. And then it will guide you to what the next steps are, and it will connect you to the people you need because you're in that vibration.
Right.
Right. And that vibration is the invitation that's going out there. And, like I was stuck and I didn't know what to do. And, I met this person at a coffee shop. Right. And you don't know where or whom or when. You've just got to allow and be open, and it will come. But the intent of the core drive of why you're doing it, you're doing it because you really want this message out there.
Yep.
You're doing it because you really do want to try and make a difference in other people's lives. You're doing it because it feels very important. But that is the process you're going through, and all the people that will come into your life to help you with that process. And then, there's the big thing. You've written the book. There it is. Now it's a whole new journey with the promotion side of it.
Right.
And so many people are uncomfortable with that. I've got to go on a podcast. I've got to go into a book signing. I just want the book to go out there and have its own life and its own wings. And no, it doesn't happen like that.
I'd love to say something. I'd love to comment on that, because I think that's really important, because so many writers, myself included, I am introverted.
Yeah.
And by introverted, I mean the definition of an introvert is somebody who restores and refuels in solitude.
Yes.
And I am that. I can get exhausted being around a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then I have to come home and I have to just be by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to say to people like us who are introverts, but feel the need to do this private, quiet work, but then the promotion piece, I think a lot of them think about it as being like a salesman.
Yes.
And I want to say to all of those people, I'm actually going to be doing a podcast that is just devoted to promotion. I want to say to those people, see if you can change your perspective. Yeah. I'm not going to tell the Hammock story now because we're running out of time, but it's in the introduction to my book, and I'm going to send you a copy of my book. But see if you can change your perspective around promotion and think of it as this is an opportunity for me to share what's in my heart, what is really meaningful to me, what brings my life meaning. It's an opportunity for me to share it with like-minded people And so this is an act of community building. This is an act of
Yes.
connecting with people on the heart level. And when you start to think about it like that, it's not about selling yourself.
No.
It's about sharing in the deepest
Yes.
way possible.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it's an extension of that book. It's an extension of that story. You are just continuing on sharing the passion and the story of it. And when you start speaking about it and people feel that and they feel that connection and you're igniting something inside of them, the book will sell itself. But just be your passionate self of why, you know, your why, and why you've written this book, and even the process of writing the book, and the love of writing this book, even the struggle of writing the book. You know, I read all my brother's books. I absolutely love them. And I remember one time he got somebody into a pit, and it took him a week to write that person out of the pit. Right? You know, you get stuck, and it's like, make light of it.
Yeah.
Don't make it look like it was all easy from beginning to end. There are the struggles in it because you're dealing with characters and you're dealing with situations, and you're navigating through those situations as you're writing them. It's part of that process for you. Share it, because that's the connection.
That's right.
Right?
That's
the connection and the relatability of it. Right?
Who knows? There may be a person out there, so whoever listening to this show, to this podcast, or watching it on YouTube, who has been wanting to turn their blog into a book for years and never, you know, hasn't done it. And so that, you know, like maybe by listening to this conversation we've had, and thank you for letting me use you as an example.
Anytime, honey, anytime.
Because I know that there's a lot of people in your position.
Yes.
Who are, you know, who really want to do this. And, you know, they could listen to this and it could be the beginning of the fulfillment of their dream.
That igniter, you know, that push.
Right.
You know, you've got people, well, when are you going to write it? You know, that is not the enthusiasm we want.
No.
And it's like, I'm dying to read it.
Right.
I'm dying to read it. You've got so many stories there. I want to hear them.
Right.
You know, inspiration begets invitation. You're inviting somebody to write this, commit to that time, that process. So be that inspiration they need in order to be engaged with it. That's, you know, the support can come in so many ways. You do not have to be the literary agent or the editor or anything else. It could just be, oh, I can't wait to read the book. Are you going to share that story? You know, what is it about? Share it with me.
That's right.
You know, my brother will send me pages of books that he's writing, and I'll come back with something on it. And then it's, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that I'll change that. Or, you know, I'm really loving the character and it helps him go somewhere else. And that integrativeness, you know, is the creativity. Is like, you want to support someone doing it, be there for them.
You know, actually your brother is a great resource. And, you know, he might just need a little bit of guidance. Like you could say to him, I mean, I don't know your brother. I don't know your relationship. I don't know any of that.
He was on last week with his new book.
All right. Well, I'll check that out. But I was going to say to you is, if it makes sense to you, you could say to him, you know, at some point, like, if you wanted to share something with him, you could say to him, what's his name?
Sam.
You could say, Sam, you know, I'm feeling very vulnerable at the moment. You know, like you're this big successful author and I'm just, you know, I'm just trying to make my way here. You know, before you tell me anything that, you know, before you give me any kind of critique, could you tell me 5 things that you really like about what I'm doing?
Right.
And if he can't tell you 5 things he loves about what you're doing, he's not the right reader for you.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, that is okay if he's not. You know,
totally.
Right.
Totally.
And that's the thing, is just, you know, I think actually, you know, very often the good advice is don't get family members involved when you're writing. Right?
I think that's really smart.
I even signed some of your friends. You need to find people that are in your energy.
Right. Absolutely.
Because they get your energy and they're going to really help you with your flow. Very often, you know, family members, they see you one way, they don't see the other. And what do you think you're doing?
Right.
Right. Or I don't get it.
Right.
I mean, my family, my brother's been on many times, so he gets it now. But, you know, my sister, oh, well, I know you're doing so, but I have no idea what it is you do.
If your sister
she never will. She never will.
If she doesn't understand you, she won't understand your writing.
Exactly.
She's not your audience.
And that's the thing, you know, just you really would love, your family to read it and understand and the achievement of it and everything else. If they don't read it, don't be offended, because it's there for people who hear you, who see you, who feel you. And if they don't, it's okay. They're on a different journey to you.
That's right.
Don't take it personally.
That's right.
Right?
Great. That's great advice.
So I've got some work to do this summer. And I have started the process. I just need to really immerse myself into it. And I am going to do that. And I'm actually going to solicit the help of my daughter, who's just had a baby. And I'm going to be going to her for a couple of days every week to help her out with the baby. And I'm going to solicit her help.
Good.
Because, she's a person that sees people from the inside out. And I know she will be the critique. And that will help quite considerably. So, yes, I'm doing it. Good. I'm doing it, definitely.
Good. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I can't wait to read your latest book too. And, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. As you said, 200 blogs already of knowledge there. It's just taking it and compiling it into one place and changing the rhythm of it, kind of making it that it is rhythmic, because we do want people to read in flow. We don't want them to be reading one thing and all of a sudden the next chapter is like chalk on the board. We want flow and rhythm there for them to be able to read it right.
And that's all in the theme.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So know what your theme is. And I think it's a very good time to ask yourself questions. What do I want to get out of this book? Mm-hmm. Right. And if you can answer that, then that's already, a direction that you can go in.
It's also fine. It's also fine to ask, what do I want to give?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But is it a book I would want to read? Is it a book I can stand by? Is it a book that I can articulate? That I could really speak, because that's in the promotion, right?
I wouldn't say, is this a book that I could articulate, because that's already like, that gives like a little open door to the critic, the inner critic. Mm-hmm. The inner critic can come right in there and say, well, yes,
that inner voice is going to plague you through it. Learn to switch it off, right?
Yeah, I would say, like, don't ask that. Just ask, like, I think, like, asking, how can I move forward is good. Like, what's a next step I can take to do this? Like you said, I'm going to see my daughter, So just be very, my minister at my church says to be definite with the infinite.
Yes.
So just like think of a next step, take the next step, and then the next step after that will take care of itself.
We don't get from A to Z in one step.
Right.
Right. And it's like, if you are very solid in every step that you take, and that's something I've learned about myself through podcasting, I've become a plodder. Right. I am just plowing that field, plodding from one show to the other. I don't need to take the leaps and bounds.
Right.
And I used to be a leap and bounder.
Yeah.
And, you're missing a great deal of the process. And that's the reason why it can't stay with you when you land. So that process is extremely important, to have something that's deep rooted, solid, and ready to grow.
Yeah, that's great. Love it.
So you're going to tell us a little snippet of why you called it Where Do I Hang My Hammock?
Okay.
A teaser? All
right. I'm going to abbreviate this story, and I'm going to encourage people to look at it to read the introduction in the book.
Right.
So 10 years ago, my husband and daughter gave me a hammock for Mother's Day. Mm-hmm. I loved the gift, but I didn't know where to put it. I thought, there's no place in my yard to put the hammock. We decided to clear and demolish an old shed on the side of the house. We put the hammock there. It was perfect. Shady trees, perfect. I loved my hammock. And then one day I went into my hammock, years later, something had changed, and it was horrible. I looked up. I noticed that my neighbor had cut the tree limb of the tree. The tree was on his property, but there was a hole in the fence, and the limb extended through, and it provided shade to my hammock. I was pissed. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I tried all these different, ways to deal with it. My husband made all these suggestions. Nothing worked. For 2 months, I didn't go in my hammock. Then one day at the end of the summer, I was exhausted. I was dying to go into my hammock. And I said, well, I don't care. I'm just I put on my gardening gloves. I tore down a rotting redwood trellis. I dragged the hammock into a place that was shady. I got in my hammock. I looked up and I said, oh my God, this is beautiful. Why didn't I do this sooner?
Right.
The reason I didn't do it sooner was because my mind was stuck. It was rigid. I thought, this is the perfect place for the hammock. There is no other place for the hammock.
Right.
I have since noticed, now I move my hammock all the time, and I have since noticed that there's not a bad place in my yard for my hammock.
Mm-hmm.
So what does this have to do with writing? When I went to publish my memoir, I was being, things weren't unfolding in the way that I was expecting them to. And I realized that I actually had to move my hammock. I actually had to change my perspective, change how I was looking at the whole situation to do what I wanted to do. And so the hammock story, it's really about perspective. It's about don't get too stuck in how you think things are supposed to look.
Right.
Because you'd be surprised. I mean, life is much bigger than that. And like I said, there isn't a bad place in my yard for my hammock. My book has gone on to win an award, and it has, reached readers, and it has been successful, and it has transformed my life.
Right.
So don't be so married. If you think that you need to publish a book with Random House or Penguin, look again, because there's lots of options for publishing your book, from traditional publishers to academic publishers to hybrid publishers to self-publishing. There are lots of ways to do it. And the way that is the best is the way that works for you.
Right. I mean, another note to that is that even if you go the traditional, you're still going to have to do the promotion.
Totally.
So whether it's self-publishing or small publishers or big publishers, it's still you that's got to get out there.
And it's all in this book. I mean, the section on publishing just digs into all of that and what that all looks like. And I learned my lesson, and I blamed my situation on my neighbor.
Right.
It was easier to blame him. Well, he did that. He didn't even ask me, and blah, 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 pointing my fingers.
3 pointing back at you, 1 pointing that way. Right?
And then I realized, what's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this picture is that my mind is like stuck. When my husband said, well, we could plant a tree, or, we could plant something, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It'll take too long to grow. Oh, well, we could get a shade structure. I'm like, I don't want to look at plastic. I want to look at the sky. I had all these reasons why there was no other way to do this. And like I said, I moved my hammock. Now I have it in a place where if it's sunny and warm and too hot, I move it in the shade. If it's too cool and I want the sun, you move it in the sun. So now
flexibility. Right?
That's what the book is about. And it starts there, and it goes into many, many places that support not only writers, but anybody, interested in doing creative work will resonate. This will resonate.
Yeah, you don't have to be the writer. You could be the artist. You could simply be the blogger. It even can apply to the podcasting.
Absolutely.
It's whatever you're putting yourself out there. Understand there is a process. And you've got to ask yourself, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this? What is the core message? And when you know that core, it's going to be your driving force.
Yeah.
Your generator.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we don't really know why, which is where writing in a journal comes in. And, sometimes we have to kind of dig around a little bit to understand the why. I mean, sometimes I think it's enough if we just know that the call is there and we just agree to answer it. I think that's enough. I mean, why questions can sometimes get us into trouble, because why questions sort of bring out the mental function, our mental function.
Right.
So it invites the mind to get involved. And the mind is tricky. I mean, the mind is a great servant, but it's not a good master. It's a good tool. Yeah, true. But we take the mind very seriously in our culture. And
a little too seriously, not enough of the heart, soul, and spirit. Yeah. Yeah, I always look at the why as what you're compelled to do, not the how you do it.
Yeah.
Or who you're doing it for, but what you're compelled to do. Why do you do that? I just have to. I just have to.
Right. I just have to is a good enough reason.
Yeah.
Doesn't get much better than that.
No. Yeah. Who's it going to affect? I don't know. Right. What's the reason behind this? I just have to, and that's what I talk about, the core. The core is just do it. Nike's brilliant thing of just do it.
That's a brilliant,
yeah, it is. And the thing is when you just do it, it's like when I interview authors or storytelling, writing a novel, they'll start off with a particular character, but the character takes on a life of its own, and it starts taking the author down a different adventure.
And that's actually what's going to happen with your project. Once you get started working on it, it's going to start to tell you what to do.
Yes.
I discovered when I was working on this project, no sooner would a question come in my mind like, oh, that doesn't work. Like no sooner would that happen when like right behind it was the solution. Oh, I have to do this.
Yes. So allow.
Yeah.
Tune in.
Yeah.
Feel it.
Yeah.
You know, and I will say, feel it to think it. Don't think it to feel it. Right? When it's coming from the feeling, then the thoughts, the right thoughts will be there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, good luck with you, Sarah. I'm excited. I can't wait to read your book. It's been so nice to be with you today. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. How do people get the book? How do they find you?
They can find me at my website, www.bellamahayacarter.com.
Will you spell that, please, love, for people who are listening?
Yes, it's BELLAMAHAYACARTER, bellamahayacarter.com. That's my website. And you can buy the book wherever books are sold. You can go into your local bookstore. If they don't have it, you can ask for it. They can order it for you. You can go to support any of the indie sites, IndieBound. You can go to Amazon. However you like to buy your books, it's available.
Yep, we've got Amazon here, IndieBound, Bookshop.
Bookshop is great.
And
Bookshop supports indie authors. So Bookshop is great, and IndieBound.
I'm seeing that a lot coming up with my office lately, which I didn't know about before. And then, of course, you've got the Barnes and Nobles. So, and I do encourage people to go back and listen to our other show that we did, Raw, My Journey from Anxiety to Joy, and also to get that book, because everything you're doing here is, you know, what you're doing now is an extension of who you are. And we learn, the best teachers are those that have gone through the process before us. You know, there are inspirers, there are inviters, there are our tutors, you know, and the guiders and the supporters. And, you know, we're all on this journey. It's up to us with one foot in front of the other, but there's having good people around you is going to get you where you need to go. And then now you turn around to be the support for someone else.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. I've loved being here with you.
Loved having you back here again, love. I truly did. So folks, you want to be an author, you want to do anything creative, you want to just read the book just to be inspired, reach out to it, where do I hang my hammock, and just go through the journey. You never know what it's going to ignite inside of you. So until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. You will hear many, many shows here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. We have new shows for you out every week. Just find them on our podcast or What's New. If you feel that you have something to share that makes a difference in the lives of others, or you too feel that you could be a host, please contact me at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com and we will be glad to speak with you. Have a wonderful day.